Greetings everyone, and welcome to my latest Imperfect poem. So this is another one about language, and similar to Linguistic Larceny, which I uploaded 3 years ago, it's written in the style of Ogden Nash, with rhyming couplets but varying numbers of syllables in each line. It's called Caution. This poem contains extreme violence of a grammatical nature. So it acts as a sort of sequel to one of my previous poems, which isn't on here because I don't think it's very good, but if anyone wants to hear it, I'll put it up. That one's called Caution. This poem contains references to strong language, and it's about words that sound rude, like shift and crab. So both poems make commentaries about language and are written in the Ogden Nash style, and both of their titles sort of make fun of the content warnings you get on films, things like strong language, references to drugs, extreme violence, and scenes of a sexual nature. So the idea of this one is it describes some of the most common grammatical and spelling errors that are made in English, while also making all of those errors. So there will be subtitles up so you can see the misspelled words and the misplaced punctuation marks and things like that. So, time to get into it. In light of my realization that there's many folk who speak her wrong, this is a poem about the English language as she is spoke. The people to who I am referring are those whom think they know the rules, but when trying to employ them, shoot themselves in the foot, and instead of saying expertly constructed sentences, inadvertently destroy them. Or else, those whom simply don't know the rules and don't seem to care that they are disarranging their mother tongue. It is by the apathy of these individuals that I am most deeply stung. Now we all know that prepositions are not good words for ending sentences with. It's therefore worth deliberating on the thought that ending your sentences in a grammatically correct fashion is what you ought to be concentrating on. Complete sentences only. People's perception of your grammatical competency will be very different. That is, if you take the trouble to complete your sentences so that your genius is unfurled. And if less people made grammatical errors, I'm sure there would be fewer sadness in the world. One thing to especially look out for is homophones. For instance, you're wrong if you confuse the second-person possessive pronoun with the shortening of "you-are" in your spelling, but it's easy enough to avoid committing that infraction. It's really not that difficult to tell the difference between a pronoun and its homophone, which is a contraction. Someone who's paying attention can quickly spot the apostrophe whose presence is the assertion that the word in question has been shortened from its original version. There are 2 homophones of the first word in this sentence, and they're all different words with different meanings. Therefore, anyone wishing to use them should be very careful when making their choice. Using the right spelling is very important because 1, too many people get it wrong, and 2, that's no reason to rejoice. Now, I know it's easy to use the wrong words on accident, but I can't help feeling some people do it by purpose, merely to hurt us. Or even use a shoddy partial rhyme, making this poem look like a circus. Nevertheless, whether or not you live on a farm that keeps wethers, I'm confident that we'll weather this situation without becoming too weathered regardless of the weather. Ironically, misuse of a word sometimes becomes so commonplace that it effectively replaces the correct usage, which thereafter is seldom heard. So, to avoid any embarrassment that may be involved, it's sensible to check whether a word literally means what you think it means before letting it do the rounds. Moreover, if you had brought a dictionary, you wouldn't have brought upon yourself the humiliation of conflating 2 words with similar sounds. The art of selecting the right word requires a certain air of perception. This is mostly comprised of knowing the difference between consist and compose, and I never accept a poorly composed sentence, except when the mistake is the result of a common misconception. Using the wrong word can affect the grammatical correctness of your sentence to great effect, and I hasten to add, without prying, I have found that people genuinely slip up when expressing their sincerity, even when they're generally trying. Now, turning to the subject of punctuation, I'm afraid I'm still not finished with apostrophes. You should use them to indicate someone's property, but if you put them in plurals, it can lead to catastrophes. Still more complicated are possessive plurals, which are a combination of those 2 scenarios and can take several years' practice to master. And let's not forget the third-person present tense conjugation, which lets the use of an apostrophe breed disaster. I have come to the conclusion that there are three especially controversial punctuation marks: the colon, the semicolon, and the Oxford comma. However, in stark contrast to this, an alarming number of people don't seem to realise that exclamation is the purpose of an explanation mark. Similarly, a question mark should be used for interrogation. What can you do with people who end a question without the proper punctuation? And while we're on the subject, although I know it's rarely used, don't you think it's worth knowing where to put an interrobang, such as when you're both excited and confused? I also see little repentance from people who misuse brackets, for the full stop should always go inside the closing one, unless of course the brackets start partway through your sentence. Now, I've picked my way around semicolons for too long. Always use a semicolon when linking two connected phrases into one sentence without a conjunction. This will prevent a comma splice. Conversely, don't use a semicolon if you are using a conjunction, as this permits the use of a comma and your sentence is done in a trice. Moving on, it's my belief that in school everyone should have been taught the difference between a verb and a preposition. If they'd have learned both this and the difference between the past and conditional tenses, they'd have saved themselves from adding unnecessary auxiliary verbs as a result of indiscretion. The problem being is that this sort of grammatical offence also occurs in the absence of confusion between past and conditional. The thing is people sometimes add an extra auxiliary regardless of tense. Incidentally, it seems to me that this word is often mispronounced auxiliary. I wonder if this is due to its similarity in both spelling and meaning to ancillary. Furthermore, it's not just the adding of superfluous words in front of others. In fact, a lot of people still mistake two separate words for one continuous word. I take an avowal that I can always spot such cases, and I also have an eye for noticing when the wrong article is used before a word that starts with a vowel. If you use double negatives, you won't end up saying what you mean, I don't think. And now there's not much left for me to address, so I'll swiftly link to the conclusion. Oh, and that reminds me, I hope the practice of using an adjective when an adverb would be proper is only temporarily popular, as I find it far from amusing. I also have neither the time or the patience to deal with people who don't know how to list alternatives. And while it's well known that not knowing your comparatives from your superlatives is just the worst, in my opinion, trying to go beyond a superlative is even worse. Now, I think the perfect metaphor for all this is that my longing for grammatical correctness is like a great thirst. And to add a simile for balance, whenever someone makes an avertible error, I am stabbed with a sword of ice. I therefore close by stating that you would do good to follow what I advise. And if you have any problems with my advice, I really could care less. How you speak and write is ultimately up to you, so you're under no obligation whatsoever to pay any attention at all to me. Whether or not you choose to is by the by. Bye-bye.